Hi, good day. So today would be our first discussion on art appreciation. So if you can see the presentation, this would be our first lesson in Unit 1. So in your module, in the Unit 1, magkakasama na doon lahat ng mga lessons. But here in the PowerPoint presentation, we are going to do it by chunks. So for Unit 1, the first part would be Introduction to Humanities, Art, and Assumptions of Art. Okay, so let's start. So let's now ponder on this question. What makes us human? So probably some of you would answer that the way our mind works could be a proof of our humanity or our language, perhaps. So sometimes we would say that what makes us different from other species is that we are capable of constructing sentences, understanding its nuances, and we could understand the emotions of other people based on the words that they use. So it could be the way we think, it could be our language, or even our skills. So we have fine skills, fine motor skills, and we also have coarse motor skills. So in reality, we have a lot of answers to this question of what makes us human. But do you agree that art makes us human? Of course, art is also a proof of our humanity. So, to better understand this concept, we have to discuss first what is humanity. And we are allotting a certain area of science or study or philosophy pertaining to that kind of study. So, we study humanities. So, humanities is the study of construct of man's frailty, and how do we improve these frail regions or these frail areas or concepts. So where did the term humanities come from? So it came from the Latin word humanus, which means refined, cultured, and human. So ano yung tinatawag natin na cultured? Let's emphasize the word cultured. So it's different from culture because culture is, of course, kultura. But when we say cultured, cultured is when we know how to act in a specific situation. So we say that we are cultured when we adapt our behavior depending on the situation. Refined. What about refined? So, hindi tayo coarse yung ating pagkilos. Pag sinabi natin coarse, hindi siya yung ura-urada nating ginagawa. Sometimes we think about our actions, and that's what makes us refined. Okay? So, pag halimbawa, nasa school tayo, syempre, pinipino natin yung actions natin. Sometimes, may mga gawain tayo sa bahay na hindi natin dinadala sa school. Say, for example, yung pag-aangat natin ng paa sa upuan. So, sa bahay, probably that's okay. But in school, we think that this is not appropriate in school, especially when there is a discussion going on or if there is a teacher inside the classroom. Okay, so yun yung tinatawag natin na qualities of human. So, other species probably they cannot adapt as well as how humans can. So humans adapt effectively to the environment compared to other species in terms of behavior. Okay? So pertaining to or going back to humanities, so again, humanities is the study of the construct of man, its frailty and improvement. So upon learning that this is the area in which humans are not really that effective or efficient, humanities aim to understand it and how can they improve this kind of frailty or human situation. Okay, so paano natin siya ma-i-improve? So paano natin siya malilinang? Yun ang kasama sa humanities. Humanities also investigates human quest for answers about the questions and concerns in life. So particularly, this talks about philosophy. So philosophy is also under humanities. So questions about life, questions about how did we get here, questions na saan tayo pupunta pagkatapos nito. So philosophical questions and philosophy itself is also a part of humanity. Expression of man's feelings and thoughts. So we try to express our feelings and thoughts. Although other animals are capable of showing emotions, but not all the time that they have this need to express, because other species are more on like survival, okay? But for humans, we have these complex emotions that we need to process and to express to other people, such as sincerity, guilt, love, jealousy, anger, admiration. Those emotions are human emotions. So we try to express these to other people, and those are also a part of humanities. We also study about human emotions such as those, okay? So that's also under humanities. If you have, or if you had the subject personality development during your grade 11, okay, ang tawag dun 'di ba per dev, yun ay ini-aim din natin to what? To develop our personality and to make ours, to understand ourselves so that we would be better people. So in per dev, we aim to understand ourselves and to improve ourselves. Kaya nga siya personality development. And kung titignan natin, yun ay under ng humanities. So tinatanong niyo yung questions and concerns about yourself, your own personality, and at the same time, we try to improve it. And we try to express ourselves also. Next, emphasizes dignity and worthiness of man, and also creative expressions. So, dito na pumapasok yung art. Siyempre, sa humanities, gusto natin na mag-express. And sometimes, we don't express it in just one form. So, we don't always express ourselves through words. 'Di ba? Minsan may mga feelings tayo na hindi natin masabi through words. Now, paano natin ngayon to i-express? So, sometimes we are expressing this using art. Sometimes we use music. So we create music so to express our experiences, ourselves. What else? Yeah, we do use words. So sometimes we create poems, we create stories, short stories based on our experience so that when other people read it, they would relate to it. What else? Drawing. Minsan pag nalulungkot tayo or pag masaya tayo, we want to draw. Or kapag ka kinakabahan tayo, therapeutic sa atin yung pagdodrawing. So, art is also a part of humanities. And lastly, it aims to shape human values and subjective things like behavior, attitude, and aspiration. So, yun nga, sabi natin, kapag naintindihan na natin yung sarili natin as humans, we would improve it. That's why we are trying to improve behavior, attitude, and aspiration. So, that's basically what humanities is. Okay, so these are examples of areas na under ng humanity. So we have history kasi bakit? So when we learn of the past, so ma-improve natin siya in the future. So that's why we have history as a part of humanities. We have social studies, we have research, so we have 21st century skills. So these are also affected and influenced by humanities. So, why is it important for us to study humanities? Number one, man gains an understanding of himself. It's really important for us to understand ourselves. That's why we need to study humanities. Next, man understands his natures. Why is it important for us to understand our nature? Siyempre, para ma-justify natin or ma-process natin kung okay lang ba yung mga ganitong nararamdaman natin so that we would not invalidate what we are feeling. Say for example, kapag ka tayo ay nagalit, we could understand or we know kung saan tayo nanggagaling. Kung yung galit natin ay justifiable or are we being inconsiderate of others. So we need to understand. We need to process our emotions, our own behaviors. That's why it's important for us to understand ourselves. Next, man is provided with a measure of his own passion and desire. So, makikita natin dito, hindi naman lahat ng, although yung passion is not really measurable, so wala naman tayong panukat ng passion and desire. Pero makikita natin dito, somehow, yung what is, kumbaga, acceptable to the standards of the society. Like, when you are so passionate about something, you become obsessed with it. So, humanities also helps us to evaluate if we are just being passionate or are we destructively being obsessive na dun towards dun sa goal natin. So we need to understand again ourselves if our goal or if our passion is still healthy or is it destructive na, obsessive. So those are kinds of examples as to why it is important to study humanities because it provides us a measure of what is acceptable and what is healthy or not for ourselves. Next, man develops to be a complete and social man. So, katulad nga dun sa per-dev natin, it aims to develop ourselves, our personality. So, that would be a complete and social man. We would be able to communicate with others. We would be able to reach out to others. So, if there are some past traumas, we will be able to overcome these traumas with the help of others. We would not isolate ourselves. So that is also a part of humanities. And lastly, man's behavior is regulated. Okay, so self-explanatory. So let's now have our next slide. So now, let's have art. Sorry, medyo hindi makita itong part na nasa baba. So I'm just going to explain. So art, where did it come from? So it came from the word are, which is an Aryan word, which means to put together, okay? And the Latin word ars, which means skill. Now, if you can observe, we have put together and skill. So, kung mapapansin ninyo, the origin of the word art does not include the word beauty or aesthetics. Saan siya in-associate? Yung pinanggalingan niya, saan siya in-associate? Sa putting together things and skill. So what can we get from that? So kung babalikan natin yung kauna-unahang mga artworks or yung mga kauna-unahang evidences ng art, makikita natin doon na yung aim ng mga tao sa paggawa ng art is not to make things aesthetic or not to make things aesthetically pleasing to the senses. So when they made artworks back in the day during the prehistoric times, since the prehistoric times is about survival and security, they are about they are using these tools to create things which would make them survive to the next day. So they are not thinking of creating something which is aesthetic. Their priority during that time is to put together things that they could use. Okay? Or they use their skill to make things that they could benefit from. So, doon natin makikita yung aim nila. Again, kaya yung pinanggalingan niyang words ay hindi beauty or aesthetics because yung kanyang ang unang-unang aim ng art is not the aesthetic side. It's more on the functional side. Okay? So, again, the word art came from the Aryan word ar, which means to put together, and the Latin word ars, which means skill. So, art encompasses visual, literary, musical, and performance arts. And now, because we are now in the contemporary times, there are much more art forms emerging from different parts of the world. So, but the main art forms are visual, of course, those are appealing to the sense of sight, literary, using words, musical, using notes, or melodies, and performance arts, which are actually performed by people for other people. Okay? And art expresses aesthetic value by the use of skill and imagination. Of course, you cannot expect that art would be bland. Art would always be a product of our imagination. So it does not spring from nowhere. Okay, so art comes from the mind of the artist through his imagination and through creation and through the use of skill, it is being created. And of course, it has to have aesthetic value for it to be for it to be called as art. Now we have two branches of art or two kinds of art. We have fine or aesthetic art, which is considered as the major art, and utilitarian or practical art, which is considered as the minor art. So, ma'am, sabi mo kanina, 'di ba, yung aim ng art ay nung unang panahon ay to become functional para mapakinabangan. Hindi naman nila ini-aim dati na maging aesthetic. Eh ma'am, bakit ngayon major art na yung aesthetic, hindi yung utilitarian? Kasi nga, noon pa yon. Noon, ang gusto ng mga tao for art is to become functional, for it to become functional or to become utilized. But now, they are more concerned with making things aesthetic. That's why, right now, when you say art, ang pumapasok sa isip ng mga tao ay kadalasan na ito ay mga bagay na maganda or pampaganda, makulay, kasi nga, we are thinking about aesthetics when we say art. That's why it is major arts. And majority of the artworks that are being produced right now, they have aesthetics in mind whenever they create that. But as far as we are concerned, art is divided into two branches or kinds. Again, fine or aesthetic and utilitarian or practical arts. So to explain the difference between the two, when we say fine or aesthetic arts or major arts, it is focused on being aesthetic and to please the senses in a way that when we see it or when we hear it, when we taste it, when we touch it, we are going to be gratified or we are going to be satisfied. Okay? While the utilitarian arts, or other terms, practical arts, minor art, they intend to be used in practical settings, but they must also possess artistic qualities. So, kumbaga, etong fine arts or aesthetic arts, ang kanilang priority is to become beautiful, or to be beautiful. But utilitarian arts or practical arts, their main objective or their priority is to become utilized, to be utilized or to be used, especially in everyday scenarios or day-to-day lives. So examples of fine art. So we have paintings. So we are very